My name is Nicki Ward, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Rhythmically, this is theoretically in iambic pentameter, which is iambic and pentameter are all a bunch of ancient Greek words to describe ancient Greek poetry, which this is not. But that's the language we have, that's the legacy we have. And to be frank, it's not very helpful when trying to recite or engage with poetry using an ancient system from an ancient language which we don't use. It's just not very helpful. So when they talk in terms of an iamb, or it's literally limbs, and there are two. When they break a poem down into sets of 2 syllables, there are iambs and troacs, and iambs are like walking with a limp, where it's the emphasis is on the second limp, if you will, whereas the other version is not a musician, but you get the basic idea. So sometimes when I'm trying to figure out what a poem is all about, I'll just noodle around. Just play with it to see where the internal stresses might be. In this poem, there are a number of really good clues as to where the stresses are. The use of language in this poem is absolutely exquisite. The consonant sounds are all in the same kind of family. They are soft consonants down at the front of the palate. D, n, j. If you try saying those in yourself, you'll see that the mouth shape is always the same. D, n, j. And that's very, very deliberate. It gives us some clues, some rhythmic ideas into this poem. The other clues are the end rhymes, night, light, and so forth. But one of the things that's marvelous about this is the vowels are long vowels. In English, we have vowels of different lengths. So we have very short vowels, like the I in is, I, near, be. And then we have longer vowels like A and R. And then we have even longer ones which have a bit of chew to them, where they have the IGHT. So we have I, tie, light, right, and so forth. And there are some of these very chewy vowels in there. And what makes this particularly good is that the villanelle. Now, there's some debate amongst academics as to whether a villanelle should be a villanelle, as in the Italian, or une villanelle in the French, because early examples of French villanelles have been found, and fewer of the Italian. It's all really rather moot, because today the vast majority of villanelles are not written in Italian, nor are they written in French. They're written in English. And so, go figure. And partly because villanelles are they're very easy to do in Latinate languages, where you have these, rhyme-rich endings, and you can bang a rhyme at the end of a line, and it works okay. I'm a poet, I don't know it, I don't show it, I'll grow it. If you do that too much, it adds a sort of, it has a rhythmic effect, but it's much like rap music or spoken word has, where there's punch hard on these rhymes at the end of the line, but it creates a very specific effect. In English, if we do that, because it's a very rich language in terms of total number of words that can be used, but very poor in terms of rhymes, it can seem very artificial. And you layer that on top of a very rigid format like the villanelle, which takes 3 basic ideas, or 2 repeating lines: rage against the dying of the light, do not go gentle into that good night, and flips them around in sets of 3s. And because of that rigid structure, it's very easy to produce a poem that is robotic and rigid and sounds artificial, and yet Dylan Thomas has created this piece which is marvelous and vibrant and living and just well, obviously I'm a fan. I've been gushing about it for a while. I've had a couple of goes at this, and I try and do these all in one take, and I must admit I have messed up a few takes just because I got got the poem wrong, which is really frustrating. But I had to take a break because never mind the mechanical structure of this. What makes this an abiding poem is that we forget that it's a poem. That's the genius of it. We are kicked out. We don't. We may, sort of intellectually know that this is technically brilliant, but it speaks to us on a very deep level. And I'd always assumed that the poem was a response, or rather a reaction, to the death of Dylan Thomas's father. And in researching this, I discovered that the poem was in fact written in 1947 in Florence, and Dylan Thomas's father didn't die until 1952, which, to be frank, blew my mind, and certainly makes me respect Dylan Thomas even more, that he could project that passion into this piece in advance of the event itself is stunning. And he was clearly at the top of his game when he was doing this. It's before he descended into the booze and the drugs and what have you. And so he was clearly at his best there. And he was in Florence, undoubtedly, swanning around with a few of the leading lights of the time in Florence, probably having quite a few, some lubrication there, but wanted to show his chops, wanted to show the folks in cultured Italy that this boy from with ties to South Wales could hold his own and in fact excel. This is, I think you would be very hard pushed to find a better villanelle in the English language. Not much one for superlatives, and I certainly haven't read every villanelle in the English language, but every one I compare against this one, and I just, this is stunning. But how to get that, to get that passion across, amazing. How did he do that? When he recited it for the BBC, from whom he did a lot of work. And the BBC had a couple of things going on at the time. Number one, it was the voice of the empire. It was the voice of culture. It was the voice of education. And so nobody was allowed on BBC radio with even just a hint of an ethnic voice. I mean, Dylan Thomas was, well-educated, posh by most people's standards, but certainly couldn't have produced this in a strong Welsh or regional accent. That would have never flown on the BBC, which is a shame because the internal rhythm of it, and the internal sing-songy nature of it, is obviously owes a huge debt to the beauty of the languages of Wales. Even though Thomas was not a native Welsh speaker, he is known as an Anglo-Welsh poet. Richard Burton, who was a proponent of Dylan Thomas, also recited this. And gifted actor though he was, it was very much Richard Burton doing Richard Burton. So the poems are in the case of Dylan Thomas, they are in received pronunciation, which is terribly, terribly posh. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. It's very tight-lipped, very tight-assed. It's not what this poem is, it doesn't have the sort of recklessness of this poem. And Burton, of course, is doing classic Burton, very listenable too, and beautiful plummy tones, and marvelous. But it's Richard Burton being Richard Burton, and I think in this poem of this magnitude, the actor needs to get the hell out of the way of it and let it breathe, because it is brilliant words. And when you just punch it up with all that over-the-top Shakespearean chewing at the scenery stuff, which both Burton and Thomas did, it doesn't resonate for many, many people. It doesn't resonate for me, and I don't think it's fair to the piece. The piece is better than that, What else can I say about this? I love the language of it. I love the structure of it. And now that I've had a chance to rethink about my relationship with this, as to whether it is purely about the death of Dylan Thomas's father, or whether there's a little bit more a lot more to it than that, about missed opportunities, and maybe it's about the death of talent, or maybe it's about not living up to I mean, Dylan Thomas was a candle that burned very, very brightly, and certainly at both ends and in the middle. And so maybe that's what it's about. I'd encourage you to recite it for yourself. Do a dive, do the research into it, and you hopefully will enjoy the process as much as I have. And I certainly feel that I've learned still more about the poem by doing this. And my admiration for his technical excellence has grown enormously. So with that, while I could probably natter on for another long while about how great this is, I should probably get down to it and give you my recitation. Not necessarily the best, not necessarily the worst, but certainly the decisions that I go into this are decisions that I've thought about, and that's worth doing. Oh, and by the way, do try and write a villanelle if you can. You will be even more blown away. It's so mind-bogglingly difficult to do it and not sound like a complete idiot. So here we go. Do not go gentle into that good night by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at the end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray, do not go gentle into that good night, rage against the dying of the light.